Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 3 Minute Marketing. I'm your main man, Chris Mechanic, your host. 3 Minute Marketing is all about micro, bite sized, snackable content from marketing leaders around the world. We're super duper excited today. We have Jay Abraham. Now, if you're in direct marketing circles, Jay Abraham really needs no introductions. He's widely recognized as one of the most successful and impactful marketing strategists, business innovators, and entrepreneurs in the entire world. He's a best-selling author of multiple books. He speaks all around the world to captivated audiences. We've got a special session today. Jay was just dropping some really big knowledge bombs. We didn't do a proper introduction, so we're just going to get right into it. If you like this, if you want more stuff like this, please drop us a like or a comment or share with one of your friends. These types of things help us build our audience and help us deliver this content to more folks. So without further ado, let's get into it. There's leverage principles. I know you're a big fan of leverage, good leverage. Almost every business has hidden value, hidden assets.
Yeah.
You expounded on this many years ago, and probably were the first person to bring up the things like relational capital and other ways to creatively leverage other people's assets and resources in a win-win way.
Mhm.
I loved your like ABCs of how to do other people's money. You were like, here's in sticking point solutions. You were like, here's the ABCs of things you can leverage. And of course, that was many years ago. What do you, as you're working now with your current clients, like what are you seeing as the most frequently underutilized assets?
Oh, geez. Well, the most underutilized assets for most people would be you hit on it. It's probably the realization that there's tons of other people, influencers, uh, uh, media, indirect competitors, complementary providers that already have worked hard and spent a fortune, time, effort, money, creating goodwill, trust to identify and have a very tight relationship with the same audience you want, and that most people spend all their time, effort, money trying to create outer periphery of trust with a market that doesn't know them, whereas you can bypass it, go to a market, go to an influencer, go to any kind of a relationship that already exists with them, that knows them, and you can shortcut that by years or totally, and you can get business overnight. We've been able to double, redouble again people's businesses literally by figuring out who already has the relationship. Particularly, you do a lot of technology companies, a lot of SaaS companies that have a very long residual LTV, whatever you call it, whatever you call it. They sustain the relationship for years and years, which means you've got an enormous capability on the front end to acquire the buyer through a strategic relationship by generously sharing enough with the other side who could endorse you, introduce you, partner, collaborate, strategically align with you in ways nobody else has ever thought. I think also one of the big mistakes is most people spend either too much or too little in the acquisition of the first transaction. First transaction can be the lead, can be the buyer. And when you realize that unless you realize what it either is worth to you over forever or what it could be worth by adding some other elements to the sales and the revenue transaction, you can't really optimize it. I create so many things that I forget to talk about. I've got a new concept called revenue system optimization that takes all the up to 61 impact leverage points in a revenue system and systematically questions every way that you do something and how it's doing, looking for uh, looking for incremental improvements in each one that combine to give you geometric improvements. We look at where fixed can be moved to variable or performance based. We look always who's already got the audience, who had the audience and left a job and has a relationship with everybody that is just going idle, and you could find him or her. They don't have a competitive, a non-compete restrictive covenant from their last job. They've spent years in their job building trust with a decision maker that another company would give their left what to try to reach. And you find these people and you convince them of the value of your product service company.
So that's all the time we have. If you're listening right now, there should be links to the show notes, which will be either above, to the side of this video. Jay, thank you so much for coming. By the way, you're a living legend, literally, in circles. I tell people that I know you, and this immediately just roll out the red carpet for me.
So nice.
What was the framework that you were working on, or what would you like to say to folks that are listening?
The newest thing we're on, it's pretty cool. It's called Taking Your Business Profits Beyond Exponential. And it's very, in a nutshell, I thought I had 50, but we recalculated 98 ways separately to take performance on the revenue system geometric. And I always wondered what geometry over geometry over geometry would be, but I never looked it up. I'm not very mathematical. I did look it up. And mathematically, there are surprisingly, Chris, 5 gradients of performance that are above exponentiation: tetration, heptation, hexation, pentation, octation, and they're just zeros that are off the chart. But I realized if you can take performance that high, a company should never operate their revenue system in the incremental zone if the same effort, time, access to the market, resources, capital, human capital could basically be operating in the exponential zone. And that's our fixation now. And we're on a mission to try to show people how ludicrous it is to accept a nominal yield from anything when you can make the same everything produce a lot more now and on a residual basis. So that's my mission now at this point in my career.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Stay on for just another couple minutes. If you're listening to this and if you liked it, please drop us a like, a thumbs up, a comment. We do read every one, and it helps us grow our listenership. So thank you very much. And we'll see you Jay, will you come back one time for us?
Anytime, Chris. I adore you, and I adore your business and your cousin.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, I know that you are an intellectual. You're constantly playing with these different ideas. It's almost like string theory for business, kind of sometimes talking to you. But what are you hot on right now? What are you obsessed? I know you go through these different phases. What's your current obsession?
Interesting to me. Yeah. I have, as a client, literally the number one Honda Acura dealer in the world. And this guy is so evolved in his thinking because he recognizes a couple of distinctions. I'll be very quick. That the barbarians are at the gate relative to the traditional automobile industry, meaning you've got the Carvanas, you've got Amazon, you've got Warren Buffett, who just decided arbitrarily to buy 73 dealerships. You've got all these technology people. Then you got this old style dealers who are doing the same thing pretty much the same way, and they don't really understand it. Plus, you've got the current chip shortage, which has produced an anomaly. The dealerships are making money hand over fist because even though they don't have cars, they can charge way over for what they've got, make people stand in line and give them deposits. And it's a surreal environment. My guy is very evolved. And he says, you either basically you're a victim or you are a victor. And so they're doing all kinds of wonderful things that I'm benefiting from because we're collaborating together and I have to learn what their thinking is to execute more inventively. But their whole concept, and I think they've actually trademarked it, is frictionless customer service. They were the first ones to do pickup and delivery of service, no charge. And now they do, I think, 3,000 to 5,000 cars a month. They were one of the first ones to do the whole transaction and go to you. Yep. They've got an app that's just like Uber when your car is being serviced, where you never have to call. If you've ever tried to check on the status of a car in service. It's the most tormenting because you can't get in, you're on hold, you get somebody else, you tell them your name, they can't find you, they can't find the car, they're going to call you back. Well, they tell you the status of it, and everything about it is cooler than heck. And I'm very excited because you know this about me. I have had the good fortune to transition and translate 1,000 industries, but I'm not renowned as being technologically sophisticated. But I'm fortunate because I get with all these very technologically sophisticated people. Like today, I was on the phone for an hour and a half with the guy that ran all of Google's automotive division, and now he started his own. And I've got interaction, and Google works with my client direct because of his status. So I get to work with Google Direct. I mean, I'm in like hog heaven.
Let me ask you another question.
Sure.
In my mind, you're like the master of offers and of sort of inventing value or even perceived value out of thin air.
Yeah.
And in my world, a good offer does wonders because you could put a lot of ad dollars behind it. It converts, it's profitable on the front end and the back end, etc. So like, let's take a typical, but the problem is almost every business has a boring offer that sounds almost exactly the same. So what is a way that your typical, say advertiser, say it's a B2B, say it's like a B2B, you know, uh, logistics company, something really boring.
Yeah.
Like, what is a way that you could bolster that value or be the one and only, be that, go-to provider in your market?
Well, I can give you a real life example because my clientele is so diverse. Last night, I have a SaaS client that they do CRM and all kinds of operational management for restaurants and bars. And we were on the phone for 3 hours with their team talking about how to better denominate their value proposition. And the first thing was to create an impact analysis where I was able to show them not just all the different denominators that would either produce savings, efficiencies, productivities, profit, however you looked at it, but then take what that would mean over the probable lifetime of the relationship, 10 years, and denominate it. And this is for an individual bar owner or a few restaurant. They do the smaller businesses, but the concept was we realized they could put a kid through college every year, or they and their spouse or significant other could both have a brand new leased Mercedes every year. Either one could have the convertible and one could have the S550 or whatever the new version is. They could buy a rental property every year. And we showed all the ways to denominate this seemingly innocuous and boring SaaS system and make it comparatively incomparable to everything else.
Comparatively incomparable to everything else. I think that's the key.
Yes.
Now, how do you go about, like when you're structuring an offer, how do you go about understanding the big hidden fears of that buyer and addressing them?
Okay, well, it's a great question. I've been trained over my whole career to be the advocate of the audience, not the company I'm helping. Mm-hmm. So I start by saying, if I were on the receiving end, knowing whatever I know or whatever I need to learn about that prospective client, buyer, patient, whatever they are, what would be the tangible, what would be the intangible fears, concerns, apprehensions I would have in terms of saying yes, in terms of making a bad decision, in terms of looking bad, in terms of my allocation of the opportunity cost being incorrect and putting it with you in the wrong place if you're the client. And I look at everything there, and then I value rank it in my mind instantly on a priority basis, tangible and intangible, because you got to deal with both. And both. I mean, whatever people express is only one part of the puzzle. They might say, well, I don't really have the budget. Well, if you can show somebody that, I try to look at a reality most people don't understand. In business, theoretically, every investment you make, every commitment you make should be an investment, and you theoretically wouldn't write a check unless you're going to get a return on that investment. And so I try to make sure that everybody that I'm dealing with in behalf of a client is able to see the correlation if they are an investor, maybe a good one, maybe a bad one, and that the better their return on that investment and the more they can de-risk that investment, the more logical it is to take the action.
So when you go into a business, obviously you've seen thousands of businesses and probably tens of thousands of different individuals or situations. What's like one of your go-to things? Like one of the first things you're going to ask when you walk in the door?
Yeah, I want to know, okay, tell me this. I ask a couple questions. Tell me what the business stands for, why it stands for, who it stands for, what standing for it is supposed to mean as far as how you express it in your marketing, your value proposition, your positioning, and what validation of that expression is supposed to look like as far as response from the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, so in my world, like I'll look at websites or funnels, and I kind of know, and I have like in my back pocket a couple things that most likely they're not doing or they're not doing well. And like in the event that I find a really nicely done funnel, there's a couple just like little tricks that I have up my sleeve that almost nobody is doing. Do you have any of those? Just like go to like,
I do, but I think I start at a more macro level. I'm looking for correlations, implications, anomalies, relationships, and associative connections that either make sense or don't. And that it differs on the business. But I start with, okay, what are you selling? Who are you selling it to? How are you selling it? How's everybody else selling it? What is it about what you're doing? It's either better, worse, neutral than everybody else. How's it doing? What are what are the implications after the sale? In other words, is there a lot of ancillary residual lifetime value? How are you allocating your resources? And I start with that, and then I start basically doing Socratic interviewing, and it sort of it reveals itself through those kinds of questions.